Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm going to tell you a little story. My daughter's favourite book is The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle. Now, can you put your hands up if you've heard of this book before? Right, most of you, good. So for those of you who don't know the story, it is the story of a tiny and very hungry little caterpillar who goes on a journey, eats a truckload of food, heads himself into a little cocoon, or actually a chrysalis, and then turns into a beautiful butterfly. Now you're thinking, Kath, pretty brave move to talk about food just before lunch. However, it's not that stage I want to talk about. It's the chrysalis stage, the process of metamorphosis. Now, I'll fess up, I actually didn't really think about that until recently. I actually just kind of thought they went to that little chrysalis and, the caterpillar sort of grew wings out of its back. But actually, the process is a lot more complicated than that. The caterpillar actually releases enzymes that digest its whole body. And out of that rich soup, these sort of stem cells, these embryonic cells, use that as food to create the butterfly. It's pretty complex and pretty amazing when you think about it. So today I'm going to tell you a bit about my journey working on organisational metamorphosis within the National Australia Bank. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why the Sustainable Development Goals present a great opportunity for all of us, and why a bank would want to be playing in this space. I'm going to give you two examples of transformation along our journey, and admittedly we're at the start of that journey, so bear with us. And then I'm also going to share with you some of the learnings that we've had as we transform. So we know the challenges we face are very complex. The SDGs actually provide a great framework for understanding these challenges and turning them into solution-orientated goals. But how are we going to fund all of this? So at the moment, the official development assistance budget for the globe is $140 billion. For us to drive all of those things, we're talking trillions of dollars. So there's a massive gap. And this is where I believe that the private sector has to come into play in this space. In Australia, we know that the issues of health, in education, in climate change, the current government budgets aren't going to cut it. So we do need to look at how we're going to fill that gap. So enter shared value. Now, shared value is a methodology that allows us to create measurable business value by addressing social problems that intersect with our business. So just because of some of the topics, and I'm not sure how much you know about the transition of corporate social responsibility, but historically we'd have corporate philanthropy, which is kind of a little pot over here, usually in a foundation, sort of about this size. Then we transitioned across to corporate social responsibility, which would be a programmatic type work, which would be usually a slightly different bucket, but often on the side of the core business of the organisation. And now we're moving over this way towards shared value, where we see that the transformation can actually be part of core business. And I think that's where we will see the scale. So each of these SDGs present opportunities. They're problems, and people love solving problems. That's how business sort of comes about. Now, I see a lot of social entrepreneurs come to me with great business opportunities, and pretty much all of the not-for-profit sectors kind of working on this stuff already. But the question is, how do we scale those people solving complex social problems? How do we get them to grow so they can maximise their impact? And that's where, if you think about capitalism, that's where capital comes in. Capital can take different forms. It can take debt, equity, but I feel that a bank has a role to play in providing capital to fill that gap. So I'm going to tell you some of the stories of our transformation and how we're addressing some of these goals. Oh, funding challenge, definitely. 1 in 5 Australians experience financial insecurity or cash flow problems in a year. Now, the reason they do that is because often something unexpected comes up in their lives. It could be they lost their job, they got sick, they separated from their spouse. And all of this can happen to everyone. In Demetra's case, she actually had a business proposal that went really sour. She was the typical person who, as a NAB customer, repaid all her debts on time. I mean, she was a young mum, and she even had her own home paid off in the outer suburbs of Melbourne. But then a family friend contacted her and sort of said, I've got this awesome business proposal, would you like to kick in? And she thought about it for a while and decided, yeah, sure, why not? Let's give this a go. However, despite him being very genuine about it, it failed, and he didn't repay the loan to her. So she called NAB in distress, worrying that she was about to lose her home. And we had Gail, an advisor, answer that call and assured her that we would not be removing her and her family from her home. And we worked through that process until she resolved her issues. That took 2 years. So NAB Assist was developed in 2009 to address the growing number of customers that were, like Demetra, that were unable to make their loan repayments or mortgage repayments. From NAB's perspective, the problem was that, we had these default issues, and then we, have account closures and potentially a growth of alternative lenders like payday lenders, which affected our core business. But more importantly, from our customers' perspective, the risk of default, the risk of eviction from their homes, and this continuing debt spiral were significant issues. I mean, it's basically a lose-lose situation, right? So something had to change. We were approached by Kildonan Uniting Care. So Kildonan were one of the many organisations in the community that really experienced the human impact of hardship and what that had, the impact it had on people's lives. They came to us and really challenged our model. And the NAB Assist team listened. They listened and they changed and they adapted, and they finally got to a model where they were actually trying to understand the customer's needs and repayment schedules that they could meet. So this journey has been taking a long time, and we're still on it, but so far, last year we have had some pretty brilliant results. 40% of our customers now call us before they go into default. Customer advocacy, and you guys probably know the banking industry is a little bit under the pump at the moment, around negative 12% for NAB. For NAB Assist, plus 56. And that's Net Promoter Score, so I don't know if you know the process, but score out of 1 to 10, 1 to 9 and 10 are advocates, 1 and 2 are detractors, nothing else matters in between, you subtract the detractors from the advocates. So we've also seen the number of complaints going to the Financial Ombudsman drop from 60 in a month to 3 a month. Employee engagement has gone up. It was one of the highest turnover areas of our bank, and now staff retention's increased dramatically. And as the accountant, which you all know because of my introduction, we saved ourselves $60 million last year. Now, that is not an insignificant amount of money for an organisation even as big as NAB. And of course, there's the social impact, which we haven't quite worked out how to measure, but we're working on it, on how that impact has on the communities around and all the people that are our customers. What I love about this story is that it's sustainable and it's scalable. I'll just say that again, sustainable and scalable. This is kind of what we're looking for when I'm thinking about how we address these significantly large problems around us today. So innovation doesn't stop there. Social innovation continues, and they continue to talk to our customers about why they're in and their needs. So they've developed a customer care kit hub, which is basically a collaboration between government and not-for-profit to create a one-stop shop for our customers so that they can get the legal advice that they need. They can get the, all the skills and other things they need to help themselves out of hardship. We also start looking at the problems that put people into this position in the first place. And from that, we've developed a grant of $2,500 up to $2,500, set up in a new bank account for people who are leaving issues of domestic violence. And more excitingly for me is that we're actually now starting to talk to the sector. We're talking to utility providers about what we've learnt so we can share it and make that scalable change. So this one addressed sort of Goal 10, reduced inequality, and Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. So I'm going to tell you another story about how we address Goal 2, zero hunger, and 15, life on land. NAB is the largest lender to the agribusiness in Australia. We bank 1 in 3 farmers. So when we talk to our farmers about what their concerns are, often it comes back around natural value and things like energy usage, water scarcity, soil health, runoff and biodiversity. Now, like our customers, we realise that if we're not addressing those issues, that has 2 impacts. It can either increase costs or reduce productivity. Now, both of those things have an impact on the financial bottom line. And what affects their bottom line affects our bottom line. So we care about natural capital. So let me tell you another story. This one about Julie and Sandy Cameron. They grew up in farming families around in the regional Victoria. They went to the cities and then they came back to start a merino wool business. Unfortunately, at the time they did that, the reserve wool prices were taken out and the whole industry collapsed. So they were in a bit of dire straits. What they did find out though was Rockford cheese was actually made from sheep's milk, and thus Meredith Dairy was born. So they now have, after 25 years, a $15 million business where they've improved water conservation, biodiversity and energy efficiency. We work with them, all our customers, but like Meredith, to understand their relation on management versus risk. And we integrate the natural capital concerns into day-to-day decision making and risk assessment. Now, we take this further. We do research. We're doing some research with CSIRO, the dairy industry and the Australian National University to understand that relationship between good natural capital management, financial sort of business resilience, and then how that translates into financial performance. And we've made a commitment that we're actually going to then think about those principles and how we can build them into our credit modelling in the bank. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about banking, but let's pause for a moment. Most mainstream banks assess credit on financial risk and return. And now we're saying that we think we can bring in the next 3 years, natural capital concerns into how we credit model, which means that we will start effectively to price natural capital risk. So I've told you a few things about what we're doing, but actually what I'd really like to share with you is something that's really important, is how you do it. How you do it is really important. I'm going to share a couple of lessons with you of things I've learnt in my journey. This theme has come up all morning actually, but it's about listening. What do people want? What are the problems? Where I see this, actually I'll tell you a story. So I was in an innovation conference with the CEO of the Sydney Opera House, and she was saying innovation happens at the edge of possibility. Now that's where I see where innovation comes from. It's when we work across government, not-for-profit and the corporate sector is where we start listening and seeing opportunities, because we're all addressing the issues from different angles, and that's where it's really powerful. And that's where Kildonna and NAB Assist really came from. Collaboration. It's evident that we need to work together to solve these problems, but I just want to pull out a few things. It's about better collaboration. For me, it's around making sure you have your shared objectives with the people you work with, that you're very clear from the outset what your individual organisation's goals are. We're a corporate. We have to make money. That's our model. So we're very clear about that. But it's about having a consistent direction and common values. Where you're going and how you're going to get there. If you can get that sorted out in the start, that's a good place to be. I also recommend that you start small and then build up to something greater. Our relationship with Good Shepherd Microfinance to build a no-interest loan scheme has been 12 years in the making. This is really important to me because when you innovate and try new things, you need to bring people on the journey, so you need to build the infrastructure around that. And I'm running out of time, so I won't go into what I've been doing in the impact investing market, but happy to catch up with you separately afterwards if you're interested. Learning and adapting. You have to, every time you do something, you learn from it, whether it's good, bad or evil. Sometimes you stop, sometimes you adapt, but it's important to share those as well so people can follow. You've got to build a tribe. I mean, I work in a large organisation doing something that's a bit unorganisational-like. Most people think I'm pretty crazy. So I've got a network of people that help support me. And I'm also growing the tribe. We've got to bring people into the tent. So, you know, this is the great thing about this forum. You guys are now in the tent and you need to bring people with you. And adjust your pace. This stuff just takes time. Like it seriously takes time. Our first climate bond, which we issued in December 2014, took more than 4 years to come to market. Now it's a lot faster, but gee, that took a long time. And another one we did with Street, where we financed, and if you don't know Street, it deals with youth homelessness in Melbourne, a cafe. They wanted to build a flagship venue, and it took enough time for me to have a baby. So, thank you for listening while I explained how, you know, we're changing the bank from the inside. A bit like the caterpillar metamorphosis. It's complicated, it's messy, but it's kind of utterly fascinating at the same time. So I'm pretty happy to be working in an organisation which is undergoing some significant transformation, although you probably don't see it from the outside yet. And there are a whole group of us internally that are moving the dial. And, you know, we have that big vision, these things, which help us keep us on our journey. So thank you.